Hello and welcome to the first ever TV edition episode of Get Real. I know what you're thinking, Hot Toddy, how many iterations of this show can you do? Plenty is the answer to that question, so get off my back! Hey, it's fine. You enjoy any of the content we put up here. So, without further ado, let's get into the first ever TV edition of Get Real. And if you haven't figured it out already, not by the thumbnail or the memorabilia behind me and the hat that I'm currently wearing, this inaugural episode of Get Real TV edition is about the legendary Conan O'Brien, my all-time favorite late-night talk show host, second, of course, to Johnny Carson, who is the reigning king of late night. Or is he? Because you see, after Johnny Carson retired, I officially declared that Conan O'Brien was now the new king of late night. It took a few years for him to get that title, but without a doubt, I think he holds that title, and I think he still holds it to this day. And I'm not throwing shade at Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, any of them. It's just Conan O'Brien came from that era of late night television that was unique. You know, today it's a little bit more standard, and we'll talk more about this as we get deeper into this episode, but it's not like it was back when Conan was on top of his game. It's changed a little bit. First, let's talk a little bit about what we have here. Obviously, I have this wonderful still shot of Conan O'Brien behind me. You can't see it, but over there I do have a poster of Conan O'Brien. It's from his legally prohibited from being funny on television tour that he did in 2010 between The Tonight Show and his TBS Conan show. And then over here, I have some fantastic memorabilia. This is a Conan O'Brien vinyl figure that you could only get at Comic-Con one year in San Diego. This is a Conan O'Brien Funko Pop, which you can buy online, but they're a little pricey. I got it when it was first available, so obviously I paid a very nice price for it. What I mean by that is that I paid normal Funko prices for it, but now they're hard to find, so... And right on top here, this is probably my favorite thing right here. This is a Conan O'Brien duck. If you haven't figured it out by looking at it, this was made exclusively when Conan first came to TBS. First announced even that he was coming to TBS. They made these Conan ducks, so it's a duck body with his head and with his beard and everything, but it says TBS, very funny on the back, and talks about Conan down here at the bottom. So this is just really just a few of the things that I have in terms of Conan O'Brien memorabilia, and I'm very proud of these things, clearly, because they're featured in this episode, and I have a Conan hat. And I also have some other Conan O'Brien hats, which don't be surprised if you see them just pop up in this episode. So let's get right into this TV edition episode of Get Real, where we talk about Conan O'Brien. It all started for Conan back in the early 90s, and really, like most late night television hosts, he can credit his career really getting started by one man, Johnny Carson. In 1991, Johnny Carson announced that he was retiring from The Tonight Show, and then started the late night battle of who would get The Tonight Show, Jay Leno or David Letterman. And of course, we know how that turned out. Jay Leno got The Tonight Show, and in his anger, David Letterman decided that he would step down from his role as host of Late Night, the 12:30 show, following The Tonight Show, to get his own late night talk show at 11:30 on CBS called The Late Show. And of course, it was called The Late Show with David Letterman. But when that happened, the look was on. The search was on for who would replace David Letterman on Late Night, and nobody really knew. I mean, there were some ideas. There was rumors of Dennis Miller. There was rumors of Dana Carvey. There was a lot of different people that were up for the job. But Saturday Night Live executive producer Lorne Michaels said, "I know someone who I think would be perfect for this role. You may think I'm crazy, but it was a guy that used to write for me on Saturday Night Live and currently writes for The Simpsons, a dude named Conan O'Brien." Everyone in show business thought he was insane. What are you talking about? This guy is a no-name. He's never done stand-up. He's never really been a performer. Okay, he was a good writer for you, but what is that? How does that qualify him to be a late-night talk show host? Well, it proved to be very, very, very smart move. Late Night with Conan O'Brien premiered in the fall of 1993 with very lukewarm reception. Nobody was very thrilled at the beginning of that era because it was all about, well, who's going to replace Letterman? How are you, Conan O'Brien, this guy we've never heard of, going to replace one of the kings of late night?
Hey, Conan, Tom Brokaw, I just want to be the first to welcome you to NBC.
Thanks, Tom.
And best of luck to you. Oh, and Conan, one more thing. You better be as good as Letterman, or else.
But eventually, Conan came through, and Late Night with Conan O'Brien became a huge hit for NBC. And for the next 16 years, this man just not even steady ratings, just dominated the 12:30 time slot in ratings. So it only seemed right that he would become the successor of The Tonight Show. When Jay Leno stepped down, and feeling the pressure, NBC felt that it might be better for sooner than later to bring him into that slot of The Tonight Show, because everyone from Fox to ABC was trying to give Conan options to come to their networks and do an 11:30 show there. So in 2004, the announcement was made that in 2009, Conan O'Brien would become the new host of The Tonight Show.
So right now, here it is. Conan, it's yours. See you in 5 years, buddy. Okay.
Fast forward to 2009, it happened. D-Day was here. Conan takes over The Tonight Show in June of 2009, and immediately his success was proven once again. He was a huge hit on The Tonight Show. The 11:30 slot didn't change him a bit, and he even brought back Andy Richter, who had left Late Night in 2000, and now he was back with Conan once again on The Tonight Show. Everything was looking great. The only problem was
Jay Leno has been a big supporter of mine, a good friend to me for 11 years when I first showed up at this network, and he's been incredibly kind and gracious about the whole thing.
Jay Leno came knocking again. That's right. Right before 2009, at the end of 2008, it was announced that Jay Leno would get his own nightly, not weekly, nightly primetime show called The Jay Leno Show. It was going to be on every single night at 10 p.m. on NBC, which even back then sounded like box office poison, and that's exactly what it was. And it just made Jay Leno look bad. But okay, fine. So we had the summer with Conan, and then in the fall of 2009, we had the premiere of The Jay Leno Show, and immediately it sucked ass. That's right. The Jay Leno Show did not meet well with viewers and sponsors and affiliates alike. A lot of affiliates started dropping the 10 o'clock hour so that they could play reruns of F Troop or whatever. You know, it was just whatever they could find, because that got better ratings than Jay Leno's 10 o'clock show. There was a lot of affiliates whose news broadcasts started at 10 o'clock as well. So you were really causing a lot of issues here by moving Jay Leno to not a weekly. It would have made sense for Jay Leno to do a weekly Jay Leno show, like on a Wednesday night, a Thursday night even, do like a big 2-hour show or something with guests and sketches and just fun stuff, so that he could stay with the NBC family, but he would moved on to something else and given the Tonight Show to someone who really, really deserved it, and that of course was Conan. But he didn't. In the true Jay Leno style, he sucked up every penny he could and agreed to do a nightly 10 o'clock show, and the show, like I said, did absolutely nothing positive for NBC, and it even sank Conan's ratings when it came to The Tonight Show. So The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien was in severe danger. Nobody was really tuning in, and it was also hurting Jimmy Fallon, who was now in the 12:30 spot with Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. So Late Night was struggling at NBC, and up to that point, NBC had been the leader in late night ratings, and then all of a sudden it fell to David Letterman. David Letterman was now leading Conan O'Brien in the ratings, and so NBC said, well, there's only one thing we can do. We've got to cancel Jay Leno's horrible 10 o'clock show and give him something back in the late night slot. So here was their plan. They were going to move Jay Leno to 11:30, shortening his 10 o'clock show to just 30 minutes, and then moving The Tonight Show to midnight. And then Late Night with Jimmy Fallon would be on from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., and then they were just going to cancel Last Call with Carson Daly. Conan, like the rest of us, said that is total bullshit, and said, I'm out, and left The Tonight Show and NBC forever. Once he did that, The Tonight Show went right back to Jay Leno, and what really was the most controversial move in business history, I think. I mean, not just showbiz history, but business as a whole. Like, if you didn't want to lose Jay Leno, then why did you give The Tonight Show to Conan O'Brien? Just let Jay stay, which is what he did for another 4 years after that. He stayed until NBC was like, okay, now it's time for you to go. But the point is, if you didn't really want Jay to leave, then why do all this? And to this day, we really don't have a good answer. But it didn't matter, though, because Conan found his saving grace cable television. TBS, the Turner Broadcasting System, decided to give him his own late-night talk show Monday through Thursday at 11 o'clock, which gives him the jump on both Leno and Letterman, and it met with huge success. People were so happy that Conan was back on television. You know, during the year of 2010, when we were trying to find him a new home, there was a new group of people that arose from the ashes of The Tonight Show. It was called Team Coco, and Team Coco really helped push networks to find a home for Conan, and TBS did it, and they were great for doing it. And then for the next 11 years, Conan would do his show at TBS and was fantastic at it. But on June 24th of this year, 2021, Conan O'Brien officially said goodbye to the late night arena and stepped down as host of his show on TBS.
So my advice to anyone watching right now, and it's not easy to do, it's not easy to do, but try and do what you love with people you love. And if you can manage that, it's the definition of heaven on earth. I swear to God, it really is. So good night. Thank you very much.
Ending a 28-year run in late night television. It's absolutely outstanding, which comes to my overall point of this episode. Conan O'Brien deserved better. Conan O'Brien deserved so much better than what he got. For 16 years, the man really dominated late night television with his crazy antics and his way of doing stuff. You know, Jay Leno and David Letterman desperately wanted to keep the traditional, sophisticated late night show like Johnny Carson did. Now, Letterman himself, when he did late night, of course, his show was also about crazy antics and silly things, but it was done still in a sophisticated way, and I think that's why, one of the reasons why Johnny Carson loved him so much was that he was so creative, but still kept it in a really interesting, sophisticated path. Conan O'Brien said, to hell with all that, we're gonna have a crazy time, and that's exactly what it did. Late Night with Conan O'Brien was one of the craziest shows on television in its heyday. There was always these crazy sketches with crazy characters.
All right, yeah. Okay, well, guys, on your mark, get set, go. Robot on the toilet. What about the more serious charge that you asked Monica Lewinsky to lie in her deposition?
I never ever asked her to lie under deposition. I asked her to lie there in that position.
We have a play pigeon right here. You all set?
All right, I'm all set.
All right, here we go.
Please welcome Preparation A Kramer.
If your bottom's red and tender, Raymond's here, Raymond's here. Use this cream on your rear ender, Raymond's here to help.
But Conan O'Brien was the voice of a generation. He was our late night host. He was our Johnny Carson. You know, our parents grew up with Johnny Carson, and that's really all they knew in terms of the late night scene. We had our pick of the litter when it came to late night television. Between Leno, Letterman, Dennis Miller, Arsenio for a while, you know, there was all these different people, but Conan O'Brien stood out because his brand of late night television was so much more different than everybody else's. He wasn't afraid to get weird. He wasn't afraid to make you cringe a little bit. He made things extremely funny, and it's because he had that ultra rare sense of humor that was perfect for Saturday Night Live and then eventually The Simpsons. He knew how to create stuff that made you not just laugh, but go, whoa, I can't believe I just saw that. Howard Stern loves him as well, you know, because Howard Stern is a shock jock. I guess you could call Conan O'Brien a shock host. Even though he didn't really do anything that was super over the line, he still would do things that would make you go, oh, I don't know if I would have done that. But that's what made him so brilliant. And so that's why after 28 years in broadcasting, he deserved so much better. Really what it boils down to is he deserved The Tonight Show. There was nobody... this might be controversial among late night fanatics, but I think he was even more qualified to take over The Tonight Show than David Letterman. This was a man whose comedy, like I said, was the voice of a generation. The millennials, if the millennials had to pick one late night host above all, they would always pick Conan, because Conan was our host. He was our Johnny Carson. And so when he got the Tonight Show, people like me were ecstatic because like there was nobody better to take this role than him. And so when he lost his job, it bummed us out. I mean, it hit close to home. It was like almost a personal thing to us. It's like, why would you do this to somebody who was such a great talent? And then after that, the best thing he could do was go to basic cable. Not that there was anything wrong with that. Not that there was anything wrong with TBS. He has often talked about how great TBS is, and TBS was fantastic for taking him on and giving him a show that he had complete control over. That was all he needed. And he got to do it the way he wanted to do it. And that was fantastic. But he should have had that at NBC. But NBC is so weird about how they handle things that this is the end result of something like this. You know, this is what happens. They take a huge talent and just throw it away without even thinking twice about it. And so for the last decade, he has been in basic cable. And when he first started, you know, he dominated. Like, everybody really loved him because at that time, even though there were still tons of late night talk shows around, they really leaned on two shows, and that was the Tonight Show and the Late Show. But now you had Conan, and Conan wedged a gap between them. And so now you had the Tonight Show, the Late Show, and Conan. But as time has gone on, you know, the playing field got really odd because David Letterman retired. Jay Leno was asked to step down again. Then they gave Jimmy Fallon the Tonight Show, and Stephen Colbert took over the Late Show, and they have dominated late night television. And during all that madness of what was going on with Conan and Jay Leno and everything, Jimmy Kimmel really stepped up, and his ratings went up. In the last decade, he has become really popular. So now you have Fallon, Colbert, Kimmel. You have all these different people, and not to mention their shows are easier to find than trying to find a basic cable network like TBS. So Conan has kind of fallen by the wayside. So much so that in 2019, they lowered his show from an hour to half an hour, which seemed, in my opinion, sort of the writing on the wall. But he seemed happy with it, so I was happy with it. So whatever, if he was going to do it, then that's fine. But it just went to show how the late night arena has changed so dramatically. On June 24th of this year, what we saw was the stepping down of late night television, how it truly used to be. I'm not throwing shade again at Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Fallon, but their brand of comedy is different. It's more by today's standards. It's more to what Generation Z, the younger generations, are looking for. Conan was our late night host. It's just, you know, it's the stepping down and the changing of generations and the changing of cultures and things like that. But I think Conan O'Brien really truly was the last guy, the last voice of the original days of late night comedy. Everything's different now. You know, Jimmy Fallon plays games with his guests and things like that, and Stephen Colbert is very political. His show is based around politics. But Conan never really did that. He never, when he did stuff on his show, he put all of the spotlight on his writers, showing off their comedic abilities and the sketches they could write. And laundry's done. And they showed off what they could do and these awesome funny sketches that they could write, and they knocked it out of the park all the time. There are so many memorable characters from Conan O'Brien's time. There's the masturbating bear, the FedEx Pope, God.
Conan, stop.
God?
Yes, my child. You don't.
You've been drinking, God?
Yes.
And of course, Triumph, the insult comic dog.
Unbelievable. Look, among the nerds, I found an actual girl here. Look at this. Not too shabby around here, huh, honey? The male-female ratio, yeah? I mean, you've got your veritable pick of the litter. You can choose from all kinds of guys who have no idea how to please you.
You hadn't seen characters like that since the days of Johnny Carson, when Johnny Carson had Karnak and Aunt Blabby and Floyd Turbo and Art Fern. You had all these characters that would make appearances, and when they would, people would go crazy to see them. That's how it worked on Conan's shows. But you don't have that on Jimmy Fallon. You don't have that on Colbert. You don't have that on Kimmel. You don't have these wacky characters that people want to see, that people, constantly laugh after and just love to see. It's a different brand, and I'm not saying that their brand of late night comedy doesn't work. Obviously it does work because today's generation of viewers enjoy seeing it. But late night television, like I said, has changed dramatically. Not to mention, most of what you see in terms of late night television can be found on the internet. YouTube, which is where we're at, hi on YouTube. You can find clips of all late night TV shows on YouTube, and that's where most people migrate nowadays. They don't actually stay up to watch Jimmy Fallon at 11:30 or Stephen Colbert at 11:30 or Seth Meyers at 12:30. Pretty much they just go back and see what they missed on YouTube. In fact, that's what I had to do with Conan on his last show, because we actually have a cable package here at my house that doesn't get TBS. I used to watch his show with the old cable package we had, but we don't have it anymore. So I had to catch all the clips on YouTube after the fact. And that's what a lot of people do. That's just the norm. So to set up these big, long, shows that you expect people to watch through its entirety is an art form that is, if not already dead, is slowly dying. Because people just don't do that. They're not looking for the big, long, drawn-out things. They're looking for instant gratification, the bigger, better deal, what they can find, the best parts, and then they're out. Celebrity interviews really aren't even a thing anymore. I mean, people don't care about what, Jennifer Lopez or Kevin Hart has to say when they sit on the couch with Jimmy or Steven. It doesn't really matter. Again, it's different. A lot of people like Jimmy Fallon. They like to see him play games with guests. But of course, that's just more to the point. They don't want to see him talk to the people. They just want to see him do funny things with them. So this is the whole point I'm trying to make, is that times have changed. And it makes sense that Conan would step down from the late night arena because his brand of comedy just doesn't fit anymore with what is considered to be funny these days. But this last decade should have been him on The Tonight Show. I'm just going to say it. Not that I don't love Jimmy Fallon, but he should have spent this last decade in television being on The Tonight Show and then stepping down and then letting Jimmy Fallon take over. This was his time to shine. He just deserved so much better than what he got, and it's really NBC's fault. I mean, it is. Now, if you ever talk to Conan, there is a fantastic article about this very thing I'm talking about, and I'm going to post the link to that in the description, so go read that after we get done here, and you know what I'm talking about. Conan was never super upset about what happened. He just loved making comedy. He loved making a show, and he loved keeping his employees employed, and that was his number one reasoning for doing anything, was to keep the flow of work going, and that's what he did for another decade after The Tonight Show. But NBC stabbed him in the back. Jay Leno stabbed him in the back. It was just a disgusting display of This is what is the best way I could describe it, is what he had to go through just to stay on television. But TBS gave him a home, and that's all that matters, is the fact that we still had a decade with him. And he's not gone for good. He will be back in 2022 with a show on HBO Max. And it's going to be a weekly thing as opposed to a nightly thing, so that'll be good. But bottom line, Conan O'Brien was probably the best late night host. Following the era of Johnny Carson, following this era of 30 years of this enormous show, the show that would change people's lives, when he stepped down, you didn't have that anymore. You didn't have that aspect of, I got to get on Leno, then my career is made. That went away. It was all about who could just keep people entertained for an hour or 2 hours at a time. And Jay Leno, okay. David Letterman, yes. But Conan O'Brien was the guy that kept us entertained for 28 years. One of the funniest men, and one of my idols of comedy, clearly, if you haven't figured that out by now. But bottom line is, the times have changed, and Conan's era of comedy and his style just didn't sync with younger viewers these days. They synced with us, again, because we followed him for all these years, but it just wasn't there anymore. So it sucks that that's non-existent anymore. And it also sucks that, Conan couldn't compete. he could compete for a little while, but then as times changed and hosts changed on other shows, it was clear that it just wasn't going to work anymore. It wasn't going to be the same, and so he started to, fall by the wayside in terms of late night. I think the most disappointing thing I heard after I had said to somebody, Conan O'Brien, he's stepping down this week. It was the week he was leaving the show. I said, he'll be leaving television. The person I said this to said, he's still on the air? He's still on television? And I'm like, oh my God, what have we become? We've forgotten the people that made us laugh the most. And it's just sad. It really is. That's why I think, and in this article you'll read here, Conan deserved better. He deserved to be his own king of late night. He deserved to hold the Tonight Show for as long as he wanted, just like Carson did, just like Leno did, and just like what Jimmy Fallon is currently doing. Because Jimmy Fallon's second in the ranks right now, second in the ratings, but they're not quick to lose him, get rid of him, and bring in somebody else. It was bizarre. That whole incident was bizarre, and he deserved so much better. But at the end of the day, if you were a fan of Conan and you loved his style of comedy and you loved the things that he did and all around just enjoyed him as a personality, I can't say any more for you. You had a great childhood. Your childhood was awesome, and your adulthood as well. Because in the last 28 years, he really is. He became the king of late night and became one of my idols of comedy, and I will never forget him for that. And I hope that his new venture at HBO Max is just as huge success as his last 28 years were. And that's all you can say for a legend, and that's what Conan is. He's a legend, and we will sorely miss him and in the late night arena. And that is my first ever TV edition of Get Real on Conan O'Brien. And there's only one way to end this episode, in the most sophisticated way possible.